This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. It is so good to be back after we took a break, and there is news, I guess. Not the news that people want to hear, just the news that's trickling out. So April 25th, which is next Tuesday, I believe. So tomorrow, once you hear this recording, Nexstar is supposed to have a media buyer day, and they're going to be like rolling out their plans for the properties that they own, and CW is going to be a part of it. So everyone is under, or at least hoping, that we're going to get renewal and cancellation news either on that Monday or that Tuesday, because we've all been hanging out in limbo. If it's not April 25th, then it'll be sometime before May 18th, because they're not necessarily doing upfronts in the traditional way. They're having a press breakfast. And then there's like a talk between like Dennis the Menace, Dennis Miller, and Brad Swartz, which I'm assuming is just for them talking about, the future of the CW, since they're also going to be announcing the fall lineup. So it's going to be an interesting few weeks for everybody who's waiting around to see what the CW is going to look like come like September, October.
I feel like Jesse Spano right now. I'm so excited, but I'm so scared. The fact that they're doing like an upfront breakfast is kind of terrifying, because it's like, why are you giving us all coffee and food? What are you buttering us up for?
It wouldn't be the CW not to do things in the traditional way. I mean, like, after how many months of just endless quiet or an endless silence, is it nice to finally have some kind of update? I mean, granted, we have like a window, whereas the other networks are announcing renewals and cancellations every day. But like a 1 month long window is the most clarity we've gotten from this network in who knows how long. So, I mean, I think we'll take it. I'm just, like Reed said, kind of excited and terrified by what the potential outcome could be.
I mean, look, I'm excited not for... I mean, we're gonna have feelings hurt across the CW fandom, like that's a given. I'm excited to see, like, this is our first time seeing what this new era has in store, because they're doing things differently, as we can see with these two dates. Like, this is different, so I'm kind of like excited in the, I guess, morbid curiosity sense to see like how they're gonna run this network, and maybe how they're gonna ruin the network. Or run with an I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to see. I'm anxious. I'm not getting my hopes up for anything, like, come what may.
Oh, fun. No, that's true though. I think because at this point, I remember I was talking to someone on Twitter and I was like, I don't mind being in limbo, but I hope like the people behind the shows aren't in limbo and they're just waiting till they can talk about it, rather than they are also like waiting to get the call along with us. Also,
well, I mean, I saw this morning Kat McNamara was making some banana oat recipe on Instagram, and I was like, I need to know about Wendy season 2, and clearly she does also. Not that she can't make a delicious banana recipe on her Instagram, but I was like, we need Wendy content.
She was feeding the masses, though. Did you see those pictures of her and the cast? I don't know where they were.
Oh, yeah, they went on vacation together. I meant to talk to you guys about that the other day. That was adorable.
The pictures were great. One thing Kat will do is feed everybody with the content.
But like, how adorable that they went on vacation together. I think, I don't know. I mean, they didn't elaborate, I think, on their plans as is their right, but it was so cute. I love them so much.
I know. Though not to like, no, I'm totally gonna tin hat. So like if it's like one of those things where like if you're in the fandom and you're looking at it, you're like, wait, was this a reunion? Because you'll have to get your bond together because you have the season 2 green light. And so we have to get everything in motion.
Speak that into existence.
Yeah. I mean, I think we deserve to have that conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
One thing that fandom doesn't deserve, though, is, and I'm just going to put this out here because I saw it in the tweets, to the Jared and Jensen fans, regardless of who gets renewed or who gets canceled, do not wage war on one another. No,
that's not worth it.
Because everyone's like batting down the hatches in the tweet that we put out. And I'm just like, it's not worth it for what? Because both of them still going to be booked and busy. still going to be
Yeah.
paid. And you're going to
Yeah.
be arguing and hurting feelings on Twitter as they move on.
Choose peace. We're all in the same boat here.
I
Yeah.
know. Fingers crossed for everybody, though.
Mm.
But moving on, though, we, felt like a cleanse for the pod. So we have sunset reviews for today, except for Nancy Drew. Drew fam, you will get at least one episode review. But everybody else, sorry, but you're going to have to wait. Because we want to jump in. Ooh,
we just need to sage the timeline. We need to sage it, get back to basics before it really hits the fan on April 25th.
Oh, for sure. Which is why we're doing teen dramas. And do you remember when they ruled TV? And
now they ruled my life.
Yes.
That was my whole, I feel like childhood. And then, especially when I was a teenager, I was just like, give me all the teen dramas that I didn't get to watch when I was a kid. I was just gobbling them up from the 90s, collecting them like Infinity Stones. Is that a reference? I don't understand that reference.
I understood that reference.
I understood the reference too.
What a time it was. And it feels so weird to look back on now, obviously, because shows like this don't hit as much anymore. But if you didn't grow up in this era, it was a thing. And it makes me feel like probably the way my parents felt when they're like, oh, remember when that was on way back when? But the era of teen dramas was unrivaled. We have our superhero shows now, and we have our comedies. I know they're on their way out as well, but we have all our genres now. But I remember what a time to be alive in the teen drama era. It was something else, and every big network had one at some point in time. And whether it was the early 90s, the late 90s, the early 2000s, and so forth, there was at least one network that had a dominant teen drama at some point in time. And you can see why everyone wanted and on the trend. Oh, what a time to be alive!
And they dipped in and out of genres too. Because it wasn't always just slice of life. Mm-hmm. You had some comedies. You had some supernatural things going on. It was they were trying to cater to the younger demographic. And by that, I mean the shows were TV, but they were TV PG to TV 14. They were not TVMA. And that's the difference between teen dramas now and teen dramas when we were growing up, because the ones we were watching were all on network TV and they could only do but so much. Now they're
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, now it's they have to read the age rating and see what the content is before they feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's more I feel like nowadays, I don't want to have a sweeping generalization, but it's more teen trauma instead of drama. There's a lot of heaviness, and we did get some heaviness back in the day, but it wasn't, like you said, it was network. So we can't say certain things, show certain things. But the evolution, I feel of the teen drama, I feel who knows when it first started as a genre, but I feel for me, I always seen Beverly Hills 90210 as the blueprint as far as teen dramas, because I feel that was the one that really popularized, or maybe even repopularized, the genre and defined what it could be moving forward. And I think in those early times, there were a lot more that were just straightforward coming of age stories with just teens in college, love triangles, big feelings. The parents are acting up, and there weren't vampires or mysteries. And then as when we became teenagers, I feel that was when the shift started because of Twilight, which we're going to get into Twilight, I feel soon. And Vampire Diaries, it started, the shift happened to where it was more teen drama with genre and a hook. And the shift has started even more now, where it's like you said, we have the euphorias, we have the elevated content, where it's kind of night and day from I couldn't imagine Dawson's Creek being TVMA. That would be wild.
That just sounds so weird. It was compared to what teen dramas are today, that'd be, I feel if you'd never seen Seventh Heaven, that's what someone would assume Seventh Heaven was, just by how teen dramas are now. It's the Dawson's Creek would be the Seventh Heaven of today's teen shows.
That's, accurate. And Seventh Heaven has been going viral lately on TikTok just based on how cringy it is. What was I gonna say? I don't know. Keep going.
No, but it is interesting to see the evolution because, like, when I'm trying to think of what era I would have liked. The teen dramas were at their height for me, as at least as a teenager, would probably have been around the Gossip Girl era or the Vampire Diaries era. And like Gossip Girl was considered so out there and kind of boundary pushing for its time. We all saw the posters with the parents' criticisms on it, which was a marketing stroke of genius. But like even that seems tame compared to like the modern Gossip Girl or the some of the other shows, like you mentioned, like Euphoria and things like that. So now it's interesting because I feel like the teen drama kind of spawned out of network TV, which we all know. But like nowadays, is a teen drama really a teen show or is it just an adult show about teenagers? I feel like that's where the disconnect kind of is. And it's interesting looking back on, because one thing I remember about the teen dramas growing up was like a sense of nostalgia, kind of like that kind of like, it's like, you can't put your finger on it, but it's like crisp nostalgia that you would see in a show like Superman at Lois. There were more elements of like family drama to it as well, like Dawson's Creek as well. I feel like for me, the first real teen drama I ever remember watching was probably Dawson's Creek because my mom would have watched it a lot and it was on, and she would have listened to the soundtrack as well. And then you also had things like Smallville, which of course was completely up my neck of the woods. And again, nostalgia. And I feel like that also ties well into what you were saying about how it kind of mixed genres, because Smallville single-handedly kept the superhero genre alive for years on television because it was a teen drama, whereas shows like Birds of Prey and the 90s Flash came and went because television wasn't ready for that. But Smallville hit right in that sweet spot during the teen drama era. So I feel like even though it was kind of a thing, I feel like maybe the early 2000s was where it really kind of exploded and gave us so many of the teen dramas that we kind of grew up with today, and that paved the way for the more like supernatural ones like the Vampire Diaries after that.
To your point about the nostalgia, like it just made me think about how those shows were written by adults who were teens in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So it had that layer of nostalgia in the writing, whereas nowadays it's all over the map. Who's writing these shows? But I also feel like television was so much more like innocent as a platform. Like now there's just so much everywhere. Everything's happening all at once. And just the way the world's changed. Like TV back then was just like, I mean, TV's been around for much longer than the 90s, but it just felt so different then. Like it still felt like the beginning of the platform for some reason. Like they were just like figuring it out. That seems like it's so stupid to say, but like I don't know, that's how it felt, where it's just like that was like TV at its purest form, and then it just became like something else. Craziness.
Like TV with restraints, right? Because they had a board that they answered to. It was like, you can't do that. You can't show that. You can't do this. I know as a network, the CW was pushing those boundaries, but they were pushing it at the same time like the OC was on. The OC was doing that on Fox. Like, but now with the streamers, they don't answer to nobody. They like because it's a paywall. They're like, oh no, you're responsible for your children. So if you don't like the teen drama we have, put the parental restrictions on, or like have a talk. Not to say that they aren't like also doing content for younger teens. It's just, and there is a shift in the way that they're structuring their teen programs. I feel like I'm seeing more. I feel like I'm seeing more teen dramas that are specifically for teenagers and not teen dramas, teen fantasies, right? Like, so I feel like Euphoria is grounded in realism, but it is also very much a show about teenagers that feels geared towards older teens to young adults to grown folks. Like it just is, it's not Heartstopper. Heartstopper very much is a teen drama, and it's wholesome and it's very cute and it's a love story, and it gives sort of like the teen dramas you grew up with. It's very sweet, and it's all about coming of age and coming into yourself and how to navigate different situations in your friend group, where it's not to say that like TVMA teen dramas aren't doing that. They're just doing that at a speed and a realism that is not realistic to a vast majority of people in the US.
Sabrina, have you watched Ginny and Georgia?
I have, and it's like the in-between space of those things. I could not stand it. Even though I've binged I've watched the whole thing. And I think it's because, remember I said I have a problem with teenagers who are too far in the extreme when they're written, where just everything is awful and I hate my parent and I can't possibly understand their perspective. And there is a teen experience like that, but I hate watching that teen experience. And that's Jenny for me. I'm like, girl, I just want to watch your mama work. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, I just like I remember I haven't watched that show, but I know it's like one of the biggest shows in the world, question mark, and it's a teen drama, but I didn't know like where it fell in the age rating spectrum. But it's nice to see it seems like it's just like a coming of age mother-daughter story. There's like no vampires, no like we're not solving crimes, I don't think. It just seems like it's very grounded, but I know there's a murder thing happening.
Yeah, okay.
But it's not like Riverdale. Like,
yes,
we need to find the serial killer immediately, or we're all gonna die.
Yeah, and I think
that wasn't dragging Riverdale either. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, it's one of the few teen dramas left. Of course not.
I know. Like we gotta keep her going.
I feel like that goes back to your point, Reed, about how it feels the teen dramas we grew up with kind of felt like the beginning of television, because I think at the end of the day, that's what TV started as, escapism, like throwbacks, what it was like in the old days. And of course, what you would have seen on TV in the 60s is not what you would have seen on TV in the 90s, but there was still kind of that element of like purity and nostalgia in it, because you can only do so much on TV. And the classic teen dramas we look back on are very much like the first of their kind. So it definitely felt like almost a coming of age for television. Television could finally start pushing some of the same boundaries that movies do. But nowadays, obviously, when you have streaming and things like this that don't have to answer to any kind of board or anything because they do their own thing, even sometimes shows from that era or from eras afterwards, they get revived, push boundaries for no reason, just because they can. There's an awful lot on TV or not on TV, on streaming TV, that just does things because they can. Whereas I feel like the good old teen dramas, edgy as they were for their time, only did what they could, and they made as much of what they could with what they had. And I think it paid off, because we always look back on the oldies far more fondly than some of the newbies, no offense, but that's just the way it is. And I feel like it's going to be harder for TV to kind of define eras in the way that they defined eras for us, just because they were so new and cutting edge without really being that cutting edge. Now when you look back on it, it filled a beautiful place in the market, and they were more accessible than some of the shows you'd get nowadays. And since TV is all about escapism, a lot of the more realistic or grittier portrayals, it's not providing that sense of escapism or nostalgia, if you will, that the oldies did.
And like, look, we can't pretend that every show that we grew up with is perfect or has aged well.
No.
Sometimes they don't, but we love them anyway, just because like I think everyone will always have that show in a formative time of their lives that 20 years from then, after you watch it, it's always going to have that special place in your heart. It may not hold up, but sometimes that just doesn't matter.
That's true.
Yeah.
For me, that would be One Tree Hill season 1.
One Tree Hill season 1 through 6 for me. Like, I have such a deep love, but I'm off and on rewatching it now so that I can keep up with their podcast. I feel like I've said that 8,000 times on this podcast, so I'm sorry to anybody that's heard me say that a million times. But I watch these episodes and I'm like, it's tough knowing what I know now and hearing their experiences, but also just like sometimes the content just doesn't hit when you're not young.
That's true. You go back, you revisit shows, and you're like, "Oh, I was obsessed. Why?"
I know, and like I feel like I just re-binged One Tree Hill. I mean, it was 10 years ago, but I was an adultish at that time. But like now I'm like, oh, it's such a different experience even from 10 years ago. It's just a whole different perspective. It's still cute. I still love all the girls. But you know, it's one of the tougher ones for me to get through. Just some of the storylines are rough. Especially season 4, when our king Matt Barr from Walker Independence plays Peyton's fake brother, and the whole prom episode is just Peyton and Brooke getting tortured. And I'm like, we used to be a fun, like, small town, like, oh shucks kind of show with a lot of heart. We're just playing basketball and feuding, between generations, and now we have this whole horror arc. That can be tough to watch those certain things, like when a show goes soap for soap's sake. I don't know. People always hate on the OC too. They always say like, oh, by season 3 it became what it was kind of like poking fun at in season 1, because it was kind of satirical in the first season. People say kind of like self-aware, like saying like, oh, this is the craziest world, like we're in on the joke. And then by season 3 it was just like soap. But I love season 3. It didn't do anything, I feel like, the stuff that I didn't like about One Tree Hill.
I don't remember. I think I fell off of the OC after season 2, not because it did anything. I think I just moved on to like another show that was airing at the same time. But I do remember, I'm just gonna spoil people because it's been so many years when Marissa died, and I was like, I will never return. I will, because I loved her and Ryan, and then I did watch some of season 4. I think I caught up just a bit just to see where everybody was, so that by the time the finale aired, I was like, let me just watch the last 10 minutes and see where everybody is. Which, by the way, that is a great series finale.
Oh, perfect. It was like the best series finale. For people say like, oh, season 4 got back to basics. I tend to disagree. It felt like a completely different show. I still love it, but it's just like, yeah, they overcorrected a little bit to be sillier, because season 3 was so like bleak and dark with, Marissa she went to a different school. She had a new boyfriend who was like a stalker, and then she dies. It was very dark. But like it was fitting because she was a very tragic character. And like she's one of my favorite characters on TV, and people I think don't really have that kind of fondness for Marissa, but like a beautiful character arc for Marissa. Not the point that I was trying to make about season 4, but the series finale coming full circle at the end. I get chills every time that Ryan, who ends up becoming an architect, sees a kid in need and is like, hey, how can I help you? Like, I just get chills talking about it, because it's like the perfect full circle ending. I wish more shows could have that kind of follow through satisfaction, but we're just not getting it these days.
No. I'm not going to bring up The Flash because it's not a teen drama, but we're not getting it these days.
It dawned on me as well. But no, I kind of tend to agree with what you said, Reed, sometimes about how when a show goes on a long time, people can be like, oh, that's the season where it got back to basics, or that's the season where I find it's hard again. I feel like they did that with Smallville as well, but me, the superhero fan, actually much preferred Smallville's early teen drama days, because by season 5 onwards is essentially just Clark and Lois and Metropolis. It's your Superman show just without the suit. Whereas I much prefer the nostalgia of the teen dramas. Maybe that's just because I feel like Smallville is one of those rare shows that evolved with the generation. Like at the start, it was a teen drama, like so many of those nostalgic family teen dramas of the early 90s or the late 90s or the early 2000s. But by the end of its run, it was essentially what The Flash would go on to become. So it's kind of one of those ones that stood the test of time. And I was kind of very happy with how it ended. But has there ever been a show that kind of like evolved with the times in the way that one did? Because we talk about teen dramas, we talk about family dramas, and we talk about even superhero dramas. And the first episode of Smallville is so different from the last episode of Smallville. And just that decade in between, it just highlights it shows how like television in general changed, because you started with shows like Dawson's Creek on at the same time, but ended Smallville with shows like Gossip Girl on at the same time. I think that's just an indication of how television evolved during that decade.
We could have a whole other conversation too about teen shows that transitioned into college shows or adult shows. Like that's a whole other conversation. And even just within this drama, it happens a lot. Like they have to graduate, and if you're still on, you're either doing a flash forward or you're gonna stick it out through college. And sometimes those decisions, varied success.
I think it's because for some writers, I feel like they want to write college dramas like just like an elevated high school drama, and I was like, no, it's much different. Like these are like they're it's a different style of coming of age drama, and I do think unless you can handle the 4 years at the institute that they're going to be learning, just do the time jump. It's fine. Just make them 22-year-olds, or even jump further and make them late 20 somethings, which is what Riverdale did, which I was fine with. We couldn't have done college. But I'm glad that they were aware that that's not something that would have gone well on Riverdale.
Yeah, it's always, no matter what you do, it's such a I don't envy writers that have to deal with that because it's such a big, no matter what you choose, it's such a big shift.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you do college or whether you don't. There are shows that have done it better. I feel like the original 90210 somehow pulled it off flawlessly. Like some of the sets stayed the same, but they had a whole new world and it was just the same thing happening. They were just, drama, top to bottom. Like it was all happening. Um, but not to dog on One Tree Hill again, but like, I don't know about that.
I think,
But like, we don't have enough. I know we talked about this too when All American Homecoming started. We don't have enough like college shows. Like one of my favorites is Felicity, and maybe we don't count that as a teen drama, but to me it is
because they're only 18. They're still teenagers.
She was a teenager, yeah. And I think it was wise for them to only cover those 4 years of college and to not try to. I don't even know what the circumstances were of its cancellation. They'll say it was Carrie's hair, but I disagree. Why they didn't continue past season 4, but I think it's smart to like, and like Netflix is doing with Never Have I Ever, another teen show. Like they only did 4 seasons to cover her high school years.
Because once you move past it, I feel like depending on how you structure the show, there's probably no more road. Like, and then you trying to like lay the groundwork for road when it's clear that the narrative needs to be done is just it's just not good. Not to say that, so All American is also a college drama because they transitioned from high school to college, and another show I fell off of. But one of the ways that they seem to be working through it is we're specifically staying in the atmosphere of sports and journalism. It's not that they don't go to class, they do, but you're also not really in class. And I think that's a interesting decision to make that works for them because they are a sports drama, and those kids they were in school, but we never actually get to see them in class that much anyway. So like I like that when they decided they were okay, we're going to head to university now, that they weren't like, oh yeah, we're going to sit here in English 101 together as we like learn about this book. Like they do that in All American Homecoming, which is different because they had to wait for their sports season to come around. So of course we're doing projects in school together and arguing on the tennis court before we actually have any games. But All American is more so doing the pathways to coming of age in and around school without actually being in school, if that makes sense.
I feel like in the older teen dramas, we spent so much more time in school and in class with characters. Like in the Gossip Girl reboot, they were in school a lot as like the setting, but did we ever see them in a classroom?
I don't think so. It was that same glass windowed corridor over and over and over again, and that was it.
I mean, it was a beautiful set. I mean, it was smart to that like, I don't know, whatever you called it, that like it was like a terrace. I don't know, it was gorgeous. I don't think we ever saw those kids in a classroom. We saw the teacher's lounge.
In the original, we are actually like, even when we don't spend time in class, they have class projects they're working on and plays that they're doing. And then they were okay. An example of college not working, Gossip Girl, only because it just didn't make sense for some of them.
Yeah, and then they like abandoned it. They did the same thing on 90210, like the first college season. They very much like spend so much time in the student union on campus, the Greek life, and then by season 5, we're not talking about class or college.
I feel like was it the Vampire Diaries did something similar, and obviously no spoilers, but like I made it to season 7 before I stopped watching anything. And I loved the high school season so much. The first 4 seasons of the show are my favorite. And then I didn't love when it transitioned to college. I think it got the tone right, but I just didn't like some of the storylines they were doing. And then season 7 is the season that Nina Dobrev is not in. So the show completely changed and it became a much darker, supernatural kind of thriller kind of show. And I think if you asked a critic would say that season 7 is probably the best season because there's no like love or teen drama or any of that kind of stuff in it. It's more darker. It's a complete shift, which is kind of an evolution that worked. Whereas when shows start as teen shows and then try to elevate themselves to college dramas, that doesn't always work. And I think in the case of the Vampire Diaries, it doesn't. So then that hard pivot then to become a much darker, more serious show in season 7 actually worked for it. And then it found its heart again by the final season, apparently. But that's just an interesting kind of like way to look at it, because some shows try to evolve, but don't really evolve, and it doesn't work with the evolution kind of period. Like Glee, would you really call Glee a teen drama? I don't know, but it was so exaggerated and accentuated and worked for the high school setting. But then when some of those characters went off to college and still acted in the exact same way, and they were all in different places, and there were too many sets and too many storylines and far too much going on, I don't think that worked for it. So much so that they had to come up with a really silly storyline to bring them all back to the same setting for the final season. So sometimes it's okay for a teen drama to admit we're a teen drama, we're going to go out as a teen drama. So 4 seasons and no more. And I think a lot of shows, even from our generation, kind of missed that point. It maybe went on for too long.
I want it on record that I believe Glee should have ended after season 5, episode 13.
What happened in season 5, episode 13?
It was a series finale.
It was. It really was.
The way that it ended as a series finale, and then there was like another back half of the season. I was like, why are we still going?
It was the 100th episode, so they brought everyone back to say farewell and something, and got rid. The second generation, which had Melissa Benoist and all them characters in it, they were not hitting with the fans as much because they basically tried to make them like Rachel and Finn and all 2.0, and that didn't work. So they finally, after a season and a half, decided just to drop those characters. It would have been a perfect ending for the show, but then they carried on a little bit further than they should have.
I mean, there's something to be said about, I know these days shows just have shorter lifespans as it is, but back in the day, it seemed like if you didn't make it to like 6, 7, 8 seasons, you were a failure. But there's something to be said about a show that burns bright and fast. OC, 4 seasons in and out, doesn't make it any less of a pop culture phenomenon that still be loved today. I mean, I don't think some people realize that it was only 4 seasons, not even 100 episodes. Like, you can still have that power and go out, and I wouldn't say it went out on top, because the ratings really like that final season was rough. But get in, get out. Like, we don't need to. I think sometimes, and this is where it gets trickier. Like, it's the business aspect of television. They're like, we're making money. Let's keep making money. And it's like, at what cost to our sanity? To, like, I don't know, go out on top. I think. And I'm not saying like, oh, let's just have a cute 2-season series. That's not a series. I'm sorry. I'm over it. I've gone off on a tangent now. Listen, I grew up on reruns of the 60s Batman and the 70s Wonder Woman show. Both of those shows lasted for 3 seasons, and they were cultural phenomenons, and they still are to this day. But then suddenly, during the era where I was growing up, shows were going on for 6 and 7 seasons. And even until about 2 or 3 years ago, when TV ratings started going down, shows were going on for 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 seasons. Supernatural made it to 15. Grey's Anatomy's probably going to be 21 or 22. But how long does a show need to go on for to be a cultural phenomenon? We'll never forget what Grey's Anatomy did, but does it still need to be going on in this day and age? You know what I mean? Questions we need answers to.
It's a nuanced conversation, and I don't think we'll get any here. But yeah, I feel
there's just like, with the reduced episode counts too, there's less room for shows to try new things as they age. Like, we've talked a lot about Dawson's Creek, but as it aged, they had such great minds behind the scenes, like superhero Arrowverse King Greg Berlanti, who I didn't do the research before we started, and I wanted to. I think Dawson's Creek was one of his first major, like,
I think so,
gigs as a writer, and I feel like he might have become an executive producer by the end of the series. I don't know. Fact check me. I forgot to look it up. But like by season 5 and 6, where they were in college, there were standalone episodes. Like, one of my favorites is like they're just like sitting around in a living room telling scary stories, and it's like in vignettes. There's like 4 acts of stories, or like there's a whole episode where Pacey and Joey are locked in a Kmart and they just have to untangle their relationship. And like, when I first watched it, I was like, what are we doing? But like, I have a bigger fondness for that now, because it's like, we're not getting these episodes as much anymore where we get to step out of the world and we just get to spend time with the characters. And we were spoiled and we didn't really even know it. I feel like back then they were like, oh, this is just filler. And to say now, when television is not what it is, when we're getting filler episodes that aren't actually like have the value of Joey and Pacey in a Kmart, or Joey having her complete own episode that has no impact on the series. I feel like she got mugged at an ATM, and it became this like whole storyline with like figuring out it was like a father and his young daughter. I don't know. It was a beautiful episode. But as maddening as that show always made me, it took risks that shows aren't being afforded that luxury to take those risks. They have to, they have to fill those 10 episodes with as much content, or they just take their time at a glacial pace with these 10 episodes, and we don't get the same content that we usually got with these teen shows.
Well, I feel like there's a misunderstanding for some people, I want to say in the writer's room, where like, I can tell this in 10 episodes. It's like, you have an ensemble cast and they all have storylines. Like, it's not like one of the things I love about School Spirits, which is on Paramount Plus, all 8 episodes, give us a season 2. It's a teen drama that like is specifically a murder mystery, right? And so it works for it to have 8 episodes because yes, we have an ensemble cast and we are learning about other people's backstories and why some of them died and why some of them, haven't been able to move on. But the driving force of the show is trying to solve who killed Maddie. That works for 8 episodes. Sometimes we get into these teen dramas and they're like, we have an 8 episodes. It's like, yeah, but it's slice of life. We could have argued for maybe 15 because if the whole point is we're coming of age, I'm gonna need more episodes from you because there's just too many kids in this show and you're not giving enough of them room. Either you needed to cut your ensemble or you need to have more episodes because
I'm not better use of your time.
Yes. Gossip Girl, the new one. That's what happened with it. We're dragging for episodes. For what reason though? Like if it's you have to be either we're trying to take over the school and we're fighting about queens, or we are a slice of life and meandering through the plot. But if we're slice of life and meandering through the plot, I want some character development that lasts for more than one episode.
Sometimes they don't use the time wisely to service each of the characters for the story, and then we get. I don't know. How does that go so wrong?
I don't know. By probably plots that just don't need to be there. For instance, Julian and her affair with a married man who's also like in his early 20s and in college. That turns out there's a plot twist for. What for? Why?
I'm also like over that. I think we as a culture need to, sunset that story. And to circle back to Dawson's Creek, they did it in, I want to say season 1. Pacey slept with his teacher, and I was like, what are we doing? I hate that storyline. It's so stupid and it goes nowhere.
I vividly remember the argument in the classroom after hours where she's just like, we can't be together. And he's like, but I'm really into you. And I'm like, Pacey, aren't you like 15? She should be in jail. Like, I just don't know. But one of the things that I don't like about those plots, and they seem to be more nuanced now, but they still don't need to be in TV, is this idea that especially if it's the female teacher, like you should sympathize with her. And I'm like, I don't. That is her charge. She's supposed to be teaching him. I want her removed from my sight immediately. Felt that with Miss Grundy in Riverdale too. Granted, she dies, but like, took too long. Like I just
Sabrina was like, where's the Black Hood in season 1? But
I mean, I agree. Like, why are we telling that story if you're not really adding anything new? Like, I don't like it. I feel like sometimes it can raise awareness in the wrong way. Not that I feel like it's romanticizing it. Maybe it is sometimes, but like, what are we saying with that? Could we have found something that made better use of story time?
And that's what's kind of baffling about the more modern teen dramas, if you can call them teen dramas, in that that's one of those, I feel like that's one of those tropes or storyline tropes. So when you look back, like you said, Reed, when you look back on a show that didn't age well, but then how come that's the trope that kind of has been carried forward into some of these more modern teen dramas? I mean, if it wasn't good back then, it's even less good now because you think TV is supposed to evolve, and I don't understand why that's one of the storylines that keeps getting brought back up. Like Sabrina said, we saw it in Gossip Girl 2.0. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I feel like as far as some of the things that evolve and some of the things that grow and how we miss our old teen dramas, that's not an aspect of them I kind of miss. So I feel like we could just, it's okay to move on from that now.
Yeah, I feel like there's a realism. I'm like, yes, there are teenagers in relationships with grown people. But the way that it's rarely have I seen teen dramas where it's not romanticized. Like it's often romanticized, and it's like, oh, but they love each other. It's like, don't care how you wrote that. We need to move forward. Give them an age appropriate partner. I just feel like in a school, because what it does is it makes it like, I would think for a teenager to be like, well, in my specific situation with my specific person who is age inappropriate for me, it's different. It's like, but it's not. It's the same plot. Like, it's still not going to end well. I mean, perhaps everyone should listen to, what is that Demi Lovato song? 29?
29.
Just like, because when you were the person who was older, generally you're going to understand that was not okay.
You know, you're so right, because I feel like TV had us rooting for these relationships, like Pretty Little Liars, Arya and Ezra. Like, I watched that first season, as was my rite of passage as a teenager at the time. Why was I rooting for that relationship? Why?
They were so earnest. It was
I have no answer. They did it in Life Unexpected too on the CW. That was like a teen family show. The main character, Lux, she dates her English teacher, who is a younger teacher. And I'm like, am I just rooting for this couple because they're CW hot? I need to rewatch the show because I don't know what they said about that. I don't remember what they said. I just remember how I felt as like as an older teen watching that show, being like, oh, but they're cute together. It's not cute. What was I thinking? Like, what are these shows doing?
But I do think that's maybe one of the dangers of the shows like that, maybe sometimes romanticizing things like that. Because I know if there was a storyline in one of the British soaps that I would have grown up watching, they would tend to tackle storylines to raise awareness for them so that you would know even when they started, no matter how long it went on, by the end of it, it would all end in tears. And the point of the storyline would be to highlight that this is wrong and this should never have happened. And maybe the teacher would be dragged through the courts and like exposed for what happened. Whereas we haven't seen that in an awful lot of teen dramas. And like Sabrina said with Riverdale, it took an awful lot of time for Miss Grundy to even address what had happened. And the comeuppance was very exaggerated as far as Riverdale goes. There was no like official kind of investigation or anything that should have happened as far as storylines like that go. So I do think that's one of the, I keep saying, I think that's one of the aspects of teen dramas I would like to see sunsetted, because as they get more edgy and start to push more boundaries and like leave network TV and end up on streamers, I fear you might see more of that. And if we're not tackling it for the right reasons to raise awareness as to why it's wrong, why are we tackling it at all?
I know. And Nancy Drew does, raise awareness for why it's wrong, but then we keep Ryan around. And it's not that I don't like Ryan. I absolutely adore Ryan. He is amazing. I just wish that we didn't have the George and Ryan storyline. Like, it's one of the drawbacks for, I believe, the first season for me, because I'm just like, yeah, but was she not 17 though? And Ryan's like full grown. Like, we're not even.
And it's her friend's dad.
Yeah, I was like, I know, like, partway through they were like, let's clean this up, let's fix it, let's give her a moment to like be able to tell him it was wrong. But I was like, yeah, but then we're keeping Ryan though, because the actor's so great, and you've written Ryan to be so likable, and I get that is also realistic, right? Like, there are definitely going to be people that you like admire and that you really adore and who are incredibly funny, who also had an age inappropriate relationship at one time, and they were the older person. But I'm also like, can we just not do it at all? Can we just, I just don't want that part of, I've let it go because I love Ryan. But it's just one of the things that it's a knock against Nancy Drew for me. And I love Nancy Drew.
It's, yeah, you almost kind of forget about it because it happened so long ago. And now that we're talking about it, I'm like, yeah, I don't really know what that story accomplished, if I'm being honest. Especially since they turned Ryan into such a fun part of the show. And like you said, I love Ryan, but it's strange to look back on that era.
It's going to, I can't delete it because it's part of George's personal growth. But it's in a shaded corner of my Nancy Drew mind.
Put it in the cabinet, lock it.
Yes. But I feel like this is a good segue into Nancy Drew. Because we did watch episode 9, which is I have to say, I'm very happy about where we are because we finally made it to the part that everyone was screaming about. What was that, last year? About Ace's, I'm jumping right to the end. Ace is stuck in the I don't know, is it a liminal space? What is that place? He's not on his plane of existence.
See the lighting change as soon as he turned the key and everything went blue. I'm like, what did you do? Yeah, I was so excited because by the time they kind of wrapped the main story of the episode up with about like a good 10 or 15 minutes to spare. So I thought the episode was over. And then Ace said he was going to send that text to Nace. And then Nancy, we knew Nancy was going to meet him there. And I was like, oh, there's still 8 minutes left of this episode. Let me sit back and relax here. And it was so compelling. Yeah, the Nace has never been more Nacey than it is right now, has it?
I know.
Okay, wait. Full disclosure to our listeners / watchers. I forgot to watch the episode. And as my punishment, I get it spoiled. I get to listen to the spoiler review. What? What happened?
Oh,
I don't even I'm shook now what Michael just said about Ace.
Let's do a whole Nace watch. Let's just start with that.
You know the way we always recap the Flash for you. Let's do this with Nancy.
Okay, so we're still trying to figure out the Copperhead situation, and Nancy rolls through at Ace's at the Historical Society because he texted her, but she rolls through with Agent Park, which means that we get treated to jealous Ace.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a think off in the middle of that room, as like Park's giving his ideas and Ace is like, see, you presumed, and that's not correct about this information. Like the back and forth there, amazing. And Nancy was clocking it, but she was like, okay, well, we're gonna move on to doing what this is. But he has this great line. He says, your brain is like my brain.
Ooh.
And I was like, okay, Park, did you hear that? Her brain is like his brain. And I love Park and Nancy. That they are people who love them, we got fed too. But the Nace was so on point. He did get trapped outside of the door though, which meant that Nancy and Park got to huddle in a jacket when they were down in the cellar where the Copperhead was being held by himself, apparently. There's a whole plot about how he welded himself into the cell. But Ace, go ahead.
Per your recommendation, I did watch the 2 Nace clips on YouTube, and I saw the scene where they're in the underground space and the hatch closes, and Nace is like, I can't get out, and then he gets knocked out by a horseshoe.
Yes.
So did that happen before he sends the text to Nancy? Because he was talking about the text, I feel like, in that scene, or he was talking about Nancy because he was on the phone with Bess, and Bess was reading him. And then Bess sends the text message in the other scene that I watched. So that happens after the hatch gets locked?
Yes. Basically the whole plot of the episode happens between those 2 scenes.
But Nancy gets out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, her and Agent Park, they spent most of the episode trapped down in the dungeon thing that the Copperhead was. It was fun, and I have to say, for being such a Nace episode, the Nace episode that everyone's been waiting for, I agree with Sabrina. They did a great job setting up Nancy and Agent Park as well. It was very lots of chemistry there, and the scene where I wrote it down. I need to vocalize it. A lot of the plot kind of goes over my head with the storyline. Usually I'm quite good at keeping up, but a lot of the plot, there's too many character names, went over my head. So when Agent Park and Nancy were like huddling together and they were freezing, because the whole point of the episode is that there was a storm outside and everything was turning to ice. So because the dungeon or whatever that place is gets all the wind, they were freezing down there. And when they were talking, yeah, exactly. When they were talking about Temperance's daughter who split her soul into 4 pieces, and they said that talking and thinking about it might keep them warmer, but they were like huddled in Park's jacket together, the 2 of them right beside each other, and he was looking at her as she was talking, and she was looking at him as he was talking. I have to say, I did not pay attention to any of that dialogue because the chemistry between the 2 of them was so strong. I had to rewind the scene like 4 times. I was like, wait, what did they say? And who are they talking about? But I mean, incredible scene. And I am Nace through and through, but credit where it's due. That was a great scene.
They were acting, and the conversation was all about love. Because like she's one of the things that she's learning from Park is how to be comfortable in the discomfort of not knowing what happens next. And so she's like rambling on in the cell as it's getting colder, trying to figure out what happened. And she's like, "Are you meditating?" Because at first he was like, "Have you ever been in love?" And she's like, "Excuse me."
It came out of nowhere.
Random, but she didn't answer the question. But like they both come to the conclusion that Beckett Dow did what he did because he was desperately in love with Charity, and Charity was desperately in love with him. And he turned himself into a monster so that they could be reunited one day and their love could last forever. That's the thing that they figure out in the cave together. And then they, after Ace wakes up, he rescues them by attacking the hatch with an axe and comes down. And then they all go back to the house because there's a subplot about Nick's friend, who's named Eve. Nick's friend Eve, who thinks she killed somebody and thinks it happened when she was possessed. She's not possessed. Apparently, she's been having blackouts because of the trauma of seeing him kill somebody and having been responsible for it. But Nancy asks Agent Park to help her. And so we get these great little clock moments because what did Nancy say? She's like, oh yeah, because Park has been so helpful with Eve. And then Ace doesn't quite roll his eyes, but it's there, and George sees it. And so everybody's aware of Ace's feelings for Nancy except for Nick, but Nick's preoccupied anyway. So he sends the text that he sends is so that he can tell her that he has feelings for her. But he gets carried away with figuring out the lock of the key that they found. He fixed it and he unlocked the lock that was on the cell. And when he did that, it transported him to another plane. So when Nancy comes into the room to find him at the Historical Society, she doesn't see him. He thinks that she leaves because she's mad at him for missing their 8 o'clock meetup because it was 9 o'clock when she arrived. But she just went back home because she didn't know that he was there. So he goes to her house, and who's at the house? Helen, who's also trapped on this plane of existence. And she's
is Helen the Historical Society?
The one they thought was the one who released the Copperhead, and we were all like, that doesn't make any sense. Helen has been nothing but wonderful to you, but sure. She's the Phantom Knocker. It's her who's been knocking at the door trying to get Nancy to notice her.
Oh, so do they figure out they have invisible friends?
Not yet. We just ended up Nancy opening the door and not seeing either of them, and Ace being like, where are we? And I'm like, well, babe, it's gonna be a while until you can get back to to tell her about your feelings.
It's very upside down, isn't it? Everything looks the same, but except a bright blue hue, and they can knock and they can contact, but nobody knows. They were all convinced in the start of the episode that remember, wasn't it in the last episode, they found out that the Historical Society is being haunted. We were like, oh, clearly, well, we know who it is. No, they were all convinced it was Charity. So they were like, it must be Charity. And I was listening to the voice, like, yeah, I know that voice. That is not Charity. And
so do they not call Temperance anymore? They call her Charity.
Oh no! Temperance is in Charity's body, but Charity's soul, they think, is haunting the Historical Society. But it's not her. It's Helen, who obviously was obviously busy in Central City being Captain Kramer on the Flash. So they had to come up with a storyline to write her out. But I'm like, finally, you noticed this woman you accused of being a villain, and then she's just been gone for ages. And like, finally, someone noticed it was actually her. But yeah, no, it seems like it's going to be very upside down now with the two of them trapped in there. And I have to say they did a great job of making you like want the whole Nancy and Ace situation, and then it just being pulled away from you at the last minute because she came in, and I have to say plenty of chemistry with Agent Park, no doubt, but as soon as she got the text from Ace, Agent Park was putting on his coat and was like, good work today, Nancy, and he was like ready to leave. He was in her house and he was like looking at her and she was like, yeah, sure, thanks, Agent Park, bye. It's all about Ace after that text. Yeah.
It was
all about Ace.
And she'd been all about Park for most of the episode before that. But like Ace was like, what did the text say? Is I have something I need to tell you. Can you meet me at 8 p.m. alone? ? And she sees it at the end. And I love Park so much, but I was like, sir, if only it takes only a text message, you're not in the fight. You're not in the game.
I want some payoff soon, though.
I feel like they're going to make us wet.
I'm enjoying the crumbs, but I want a full bite.
well, you did get jealous, Ace, what you were waiting for. And we were waiting for because we wanted to, we were like, where is his feelings at this? Like, she's like pining away and gazing. Where is he? And he's like, so she likes Park. let me get on this real quick because I can't, because I will. Bess was right. The window was closing, and it was closing fast.
And I loved how he was flustered when he was kind of called out on, because she said about how the window to Nancy's closing for your feelings, so you need to tell her your feelings. And he was like, "Who says they have windows? Feelings?" And he just completely caught him off guard. And like we've mentioned how everyone keeps like kind of nudging Nancy and nudge, wink, wink about the whole thing. Remember when Nancy was jealous? Or was it over S with Amanda, and she was like she's competent or whatever. But now we're seeing the S side of it. We've always said we're kind of this S side of it. Now it's really, really nice to see it playing out slowly. But I feel like we always said they're giving us crumbs and they're like kind of like subtly pushing the net. I feel like with the exception of Nancy's steamy dream a few weeks ago, because we all knew Nancy was heading in that direction, I feel like this is the most direct they've ever been about it, because somebody actually had a conversation about it, which I dare say is more than we've ever had, because Bess talking to S about it was making him confront those feelings. So it's out there. Someone spoke it into existence. I just feel now you're going to get the little bit of a predictable. They almost had their end game, and now he's off somewhere while Agent Park's still there. So I feel like whatever they do with these 2 or 3 episodes, I feel like we're going to see a few of the typical tropes of making us wait for the Nace romance, because they literally can't be together right now.
I know.
Speaking of the steamy episode that you just referenced, I can't believe Nancy didn't see him in that pink shirt and just go feral.
He looks so nice in his pink shirt.
That pink shirt was giving everything it needed to give. That's all I'm going to say.
Nice costume section.
Yeah, I have memories of maybe a photo of Nancy with S in that pink shirt, and I was like, "Is this the episode?" But no, now that
we have another pink shirt to look forward to.
Yeah, but it might be the same one. I don't think he can change in whatever dimension he's trapped in. So I assume maybe that's a photo of the reunion. So that's why I'm guessing there'll be like 2 or 3 episodes of him stuck there before he finally gets out in the finale. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I feel like they're going to make us wait for it now. Since we got so close and the finale's not quite here yet. But I never have I wanted to flick on another episode so badly.
I think they're going to red string of fate us, because the key he was working on is the key she finds in the cell, and he fixed it. And I'm like, she was down there with Park talking about love, but there's something about that story about the lovers pact. I was like, it's going to become a Nace thing. I feel it in my. There's like, are they going to have to make a pact to get him out of this thing? Which means, of course, supernatural happenings that have consequences. Because exactly what happened to Charity and Beckett. And I'm like, I know I've been spoiled a little bit. If this is the way we're going, I'm going to eat this all up. I'm like, I'm so excited.
We're ready for Nace at this point.
I know.
I can't wait to watch this episode. I can't believe I forgot.
So good. You're all right. So good.
I don't think you're going to like the Vanson, though.
Oh. More. There's more?
So the they were actually quite lovely at the start of the episode. Like, she finally gets to tell him that she, doesn't have to. She's not going to die in 10 years. And so they're excited. They keep talking about how they're the perfect team. They're going to solve this Eve situation, and then they're gonna elope. And so we go running down to the courthouse with 10 minutes to spare. And the judge comes out after they're like yelling at the door because it's been locked. And I was like, I feel like she should turn you away. It's 10 minutes before closing, but fine. But she's happy to do it. And they are going to, the paperwork's all handled. George says, I should have an aisle. So they're in a hallway. And so the judge is on one side and Nick is on the other. And George just doesn't move. And she says, I can't. And they go, and he's like, what? And so the judge gives them a minute and he goes down there. And then they have a talk about how they're probably rushing into this because of the life and death stakes of what they had just been through, and all the time that they've been together has always been one thing after another. And George says that she feels like if they do this now, they'll end up being like those plants that twine together and like suck the life out of one another, because they haven't learned how to grow on their own. And she wants to be able to grow beside him, not, constrict each other. And he's like, yeah, I agree. And I was like, you're wasting my time. Like, So she takes the ring off and they're crying and they're still
What?
gonna be together, but they're not gonna get married, and they're gonna figure out how to be together as they grow, because he still has to deal with the trauma of what he had done, accidentally killing someone in self-defense. And I'm just like, you see what I mean about wasting my time? Like,
Now, okay, I'm not gonna drag it too hard, but those storylines always stress me out. Like, I've never been engaged, I've never been married, but like they make sometimes these storylines make it out to be such a bigger deal than I think it is. Because I'm like, you can keep the ring on and stay together and not have a crying moment. You could have gotten married and just been like, YOLO, we have ghosts haunting us every day. What does it matter if we're married? It doesn't change anything. Like, you can still be on and off again. I don't know. It's just like those storylines don't always work for me because I just have such a, I don't know. I don't have a perspective on, I guess, marriage and engagements that is so like, oh, it has to be one or the other. And it's like, you can wear the ring. You don't have to have the dramatic TV moment of taking it off. I don't know. I guess I have to see it happen and unfold. But like, I feel like I've seen it so many times in TV where I'm like, why are you making such a big deal out of it? It's like, you both clearly love each other. You don't need to, it doesn't need to be now, does it? Like, if you're on the same page about like you loving each other, but you don't think it's the right time to do it, then just don't do it. I don't know. It's just like sometimes the storylines just don't work for me. I don't know.
No, I have to be honest. I was a bit disappointed that they went down this route because we kind of predicted this would happen. When George got free from Odette and that they had the rest of their lives together. And then at the start of the episode set it up that they were going to subvert that expectation. And then we just ended up there by the end of it. Now, Nancy does tend to subvert things, so that's fine. But the fact then that we ended up in the predictable, I will say the acting in that scene absolutely sold it for me. I was like, yes, you go, live your life and be happy. But after I was writing it down in my notes, I was like, wait a minute, that's exactly what I didn't want to happen. So I don't know. I agree with you. It's sad they went the predictable right here because, like you said, they don't have to get married tomorrow. They could like put the wedding off for like 6 years. It doesn't mean she needs to take the ring off and hand it back to him, if you know what I mean.
Or you could get married and not wear a ring. It can be whatever you need it to be. If you can agree on that you both want to be together, I don't understand why you need to do all that.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I felt like it pulled the rug out from under shippers because they literally spend the whole episode jazzed about their future and getting married. And I think it's, what is that, Michael? The last 3 minutes of the show that before we get to the Nancy and Ace stuff, we're gung ho about like eloping, and we're so excited. And it's like, and of course then it's like George who pulls out, and of course then it's Nick being okay with it. And I'm like, I felt like that just wasn't necessary. I felt like we didn't have to decide out of the exuberance and excitement of her not losing her life in 10 years that we decide to go elope and then change our minds. Like, it speaks to, like, I know the point is that they're immature in their love, and maybe they are rushing things and they haven't been together for a long time. But I'm like, okay, but just be engaged, just have a longer engagement. You've only been engaged for like what, 2 weeks? Like, just wait a year. Just leave the ring on. I get it's a big commitment because that's what she's scared of. She said it's supposed to be for life and she only wants to do this once. And I get that. But you two just said you're sure about each other. So if you're sure about each other, give it 365 days and plan a nice wedding that all of your family can come to. And you'll be ready by next March or something.
Yeah. And it is important that their character journeys played into that. Again, what happened with Nick's friend made him realize that he actually still has a lot of trauma to unpack that he hasn't been doing, and he thinks now that maybe by staying in Horseshoe Bay he's been running away from that instead of going back home and dealing with it. And I think that's a great arc because we always said Nick kind of had to get through that off screen because of all he's been going through. So it's nice to finally see them addressing that. There's a lot they need to address, and I appreciate that they're there storyline wise, but they're going to do it together anyway. I don't know whether we needed to go down the predictable ask me again and so often kind of story, because we've seen that kind of done on television many, many times before.
Then it made me think, is he going to be able to ask her again? I feel like if we were going to have like 5 or 6 seasons, it probably wouldn't happen. Like when I'm thinking about the nostalgic, what we were talking about with teen dramas, usually they'd get the scene again, but we'd have moved on by the time that they do it again, and they both recognize in that moment, breaking the hearts of shippers everywhere, that they did grow apart, and it was a good thing that they didn't get married because they might have resented each other. Nancy Drew's not going to do that because they only have one season left. But I'm like, y'all keep brushing up against each other. Are we trying to say it's y'all against everything? Or are we trying to say you're not compatible for the long term? I don't know.
I don't know. Like Michael said, it feels like the arc of their relationship this season has been a touch on the predictable side. Like it's hitting certain beats that you see in television relationships. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they did break up by the season finale. And then season 4 was about them getting back together or something.
That's a final. Yeah, that's definitely a final season story right there. I can see that happening.
Love will find a way. I don't know. I don't like those storylines. I don't. And then the best of it all.
She seemed like she was in a good mood.
Oh,
okay.
she was with Ace. I'm having trouble with Bess this season.
Me too.
She was
Is she being messy?
She was so aggressively against Eve, who she doesn't know, and was like so sure that Eve murdered her boyfriend. and she's like, why are you so hung up on it being possession? I was like, that's a good question, because I don't know why Eve thinks like it's either possession, it's possession or nothing else. Like there's no other possibility for why you would have blacked out. But the way that like Bess was like, you're lying about something. I know you're lying about something. Like, you did it. You're the one who killed your boyfriend. I'm like, chill. You met her like 5 minutes ago. What are we doing?
It's like what Reed said about how them hitting all the predictable beats of a story. I feel like they're doing the exact same with Bess here. This whole season, Bess has had a lot of like comedic, accentuated, exaggerated kind of storylines. And here we are again. The reason she was interrogating this woman is because she's starting to doubt Temperance, which that's a nice, interesting thing. Because now that Nancy's on Temperance's side, Bess is like, wait a minute, what if I've made a grave mistake and made Nancy let her guard down? That's good. But when Eve turned up asking for help, she said, I need you to treat me like the Drew crew. So investigate this so you can prove I'm innocent. And then Bess just went off the deep end, pretending that she was guilty, trying to convince the rest of them that she was guilty, interrogating her left, right, and center. And it was also because Bess was insecure about the possibility that Temperance might be guilty of more than they know. And so now that Bess is mistrusting of Temperance, she suddenly started taking that out on Eve completely. And she was proven wrong, because Eve was blacking out. It just wasn't paranormal for a reason. So we play Bess for laughs too much, I think, in this episode. Really like fell into that. She was hilarious, but halfway through the episode you're like, okay, enough is enough now. And it wasn't until the final 10 minutes that she finally learned that she was wrong.
Now, where was this energy for Amanda Bobbsey?
Right.
It was non-existent, which is the whole thing with Bess and the way that they've selected her anger, right? Because the last time she was like this angry was when she felt like her friends weren't supporting her and believing in her ability to solve things just because she's not Nancy. And now it's like is Nancy busy? I forget when. Nancy's busy. So now someone has to step up and be Nancy. Except Nancy does not interrogate like this. She's not like, I know you did it. Like, I have no clues, but I know you did it. Like, that's not who she is. I don't know. Like, Bess had to be that person. And I also find it interesting that like, it's not like, it's the fact that Temperance took her daughter's face that makes Bess question Temperance. It's not the murder Temperance committed episodes before. That's the thing, that she gave a man a stroke and killed him, but that wasn't enough to change your mind. But she steals her daughter's face, and we've gone too far. Like, I just
But then at the end of the episode, Bess breaks into why is that name place of that the name of that place escaping me?
Icarus Hall.
That's the one. Bess breaks in there because Temperance is out of town, and she finds.
Where is Temperance going?
I actually don't know. Where is Temperance? Do we know?
We're going on vacation.
She was stuck in, I forget the town name, but because they closed the bridge back to Horseshoe Bay, which is an island. I keep forgetting it's an island. But so Temperance couldn't get back into town, so she was like excessively calling Bess, trying to tell her like, I can't get back in. Why aren't you picking up my calls?
That's crazy. I would have assumed she was like she could move through time and space.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a tunnel out there somewhere. But in the end, Bess broke in and found the letters that Temperance was writing to her daughter, which I think was the big cliffhanger of last week's episode. So Bess was 100% right. But however, when she tried to take photos of the letters, the writing was blurred. When she tried to leave the building, the letters caught on fire. So Bess has now vowed to find evidence that she can actually take out of Vicarage Hall to prove the Temperance can't be trusted. And so in the end, Bess was right. But I'm like, you could just tell Nancy that you found letters. Like, Nancy will believe you. You don't need to go and find tangible evidence. Like, take Nancy to Icarus Hall. Like, it's not that.
Can't we like plant like nanny cams? Like, Temperance doesn't know what a camera is. She's from the 1800s.
Well, I wonder if that means they're going to bring the phones into this in some way, because they kept, unless we were promoting voice apps, but they kept...
that was weird. That was so weird.
Suddenly, Bess talks to her phone, does voice texts, which was something she wasn't doing prior. And she almost sends a text to Temperance because she's talking to... She's talking to George, and the phone hears her and tries to text what she said. And she's like, no, don't do that, you know? And then there's another scene where she's like, she's like, I know our phones listen to us all the time. How do I get whatever the phone was listening to? And Nace is like, oh, they're called passive recordings. I can give you the instructions. And that's how she finds out that Eve was arguing with her boyfriend, because they found a passive recording in the cloud of Eve yelling at her boyfriend for cheating on her. And she did not kill him. She blacked out because she self-soothes / self-harms in her blackouts. This is not funny. I'm so sorry. He was drunk and he fell off the boat, and that's how he died.
Oh no.
It's just the way that they did it. She's like blacked out and tying the rope around her hands and untying it, because she's self-soothing in her dissociation. And he's just in the back and he falls over. And off the ship, and the girl in the front is taking a selfie.
I cannot wait to see that scene.
They truly didn't care about that man. It's just a terrible way to die.
They're like, oh look, he fell off, you're innocent.
I mean, look, it's okay. I mean, sometimes it's funny to laugh about TV. I don't want to say Jets things, because Michael, I was talking to you about 911 when Buck was on the ladder and he got struck by lightning and he's just hanging. Totally inappropriate, but I was dying.
I feel the same thing. It's the 911 episode in the first season where someone fell out of a roller coaster, but it's just a doll, and they're just going go shoo. And I had to pause. I couldn't move on. It was too much.
TV going to TV sometimes.
Like, do we have budget? No. Are you getting the story? Absolutely.
Oh man. But where were we? Stories. Yes. The reason we were going on about phones was so that was a story that obviously deleted itself after 24 hours. Although I'm sure someone, if that story set up for 24 hours, I'm sure someone would have said this dude fell off the boat in the background. So maybe they deleted it in haste. I don't know, but ESPN, the Felicity Smoke of Nancy Drew, was able to track that down easily and solve the crime, no problem whatsoever. But yeah, I don't know where the voice apps thing was going from. I think that'll be dropped going forward. But like, I just feel as far as Bess was concerned, there was a lot of reaching with her story this episode. I want us to stop playing Bess for laughs, because we said how she could be like the Dark Willow of Nancy Drew and like have all these powers or whatever, and we're still playing her as laughs.
4 episodes left.
No, we're not.
No, now it's full blown Nace time. We don't have time for well, we could still have, I guess, in the last 20 minutes of the season finale. Bess just calls the powers that be to Icarus Hall to put Temperance down. I don't know.
I'd buy that. Like, where was this all season?
I mean, I wouldn't mind.
That'd be great. But I think that's it for Nancy Drew season 3, episode 9. I feel like we mined everything. I can't think of anything else. Oh, other than I think at some point Nick is gonna go home to Florida, because we spent too much time talking about how he's ashamed, and that's why he hasn't been home yet.
Ooh, a Florida episode would be fun.
It would be. I wonder if we'll be trying to pretend that Maine is Florida.
Probably. And at that point, we're pretending Canada is both.
That's true. Well, you know what? You do what you have to do.
And don't worry, everybody. I am gonna watch the episode. I'll probably watch it tonight. Like, I'm not just gonna skip it. But here we are. I know what happens just out of context. I love it.
I cannot wait until the group chat blows up and you're like, oh my god. Okay, I think that is it for this week's pod episode. So we are the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all.